Let's get to our first guest in this hour. I'm delighted to be joined by Colonel Ash Alexander Cooper, OBE. He's the former Joint Operational Commander with British Armed Forces. He spent 4 years himself serving in Afghanistan. Very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us. Just briefly, first of all, your reaction when you found out, if I assume that on Tuesday you were also, like the rest of us, found out only on Tuesday about this, not only this data leak, which happened way back in 22, but the government said they only found out about it in 23, and the fact that for the best part of 2 years it was kept secret using superinjunctions in the courts. What was your reaction to that?
I think probably overwhelming disappointment that yet another cock-up really has happened that has put lives at risk and cost money and trauma for many, many people. Clearly avoidable. And I think a lot of questions still need to be answered about those that were applying for that scheme. I think 18,000 applied, which is whether the numbers sort of get captured and have gone up to maybe 100,000 when you add families and stuff. Of those 18,000, I wonder how many actually would have been eligible had the process gone through normally, and how many of those that we rushed through were actually legitimate applicants, because those that were legitimate, many of whom I served with, did not get through and were left behind, and some have been killed.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And we know only a fraction of those people did actually end up getting brought to this country, and we were told that original, the £7 billion cost that was mentioned repeatedly in court hearings under the superinjunction is now not expected to be the cost. We're looking at sort of possibly up to £850 million. It'll be more than that, so let's assume £1 billion in terms of the cost of bringing people over. And then, of course, we're looking at the compensation. I'd like to come on to that. But as you say, I know people who, well, no, I've had people who get in touch with me when we had the Kabul airlift who were desperately trying to get out of the country. I've stayed in touch with the man we've called Sammy, who has showed me proof that he was an Afghan interpreter. Now, whether he was not, I'm not in a position to verify, but I'm pretty sure the MoD is. I've given their details. I've given the details to, the then Defence Secretary Ben Wallace's special advisor, spoken to him about it. Senior figures who've been working trying to get people out of Afghanistan. We know that there were many, many people who genuinely did work with British forces who would be at risk, who are still stuck and living in hiding in Afghanistan. And yet at least one of the people who's been allowed to come here is someone who didn't work with British forces but had threatened to expose this leak on social media and has been brought to here with his family.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes me really cross is that there are, as you said, there are people who legitimately put their lives at risk, in some cases for up to 20 years, supporting what the UK wanted to do, so supporting UK interests, and many have lost limbs or lost friends and colleagues, and I've certainly had Afghans, shot and killed or blown up in front of me or next to me and around me, and they are clearly very legitimate applicants, those that survived and wanted to come here. There are others who may have worked for the British government for very short periods of time, who may have a case, but when one's trying to prioritise the severity of the threats to their lives, one really should apply a sensible metric to say, who is at most risk and who isn't. And I worry that with this leak, that there is a potential that people who really would never have gone through the process had there been a proper process, were rushed through, and that meant that others could not get here.
And we understand that original list that was leaked, where they were basically saying, no, we're going to need to vet these people because we don't know any Tom, Dick or Harry could apply. It doesn't mean they're going to be found to be legitimate. But I understand you've been contacted by people in the last few days reading this news who are stuck in Afghanistan.
I honestly, I get messages every week from all sorts of people, from civilians who are journalists or human rights activists or female professional all sorts of roles that are now persecuted or can't leave their houses or are in hiding. So that wave of there's a constant wave of people reaching out to see if I can help. I helped others.
This is the difficulty, though, isn't it? Because basically we should say, well, anyone who had any sort of role, particularly women or anyone in the civil society, women professors, women politicians, any girl who can't go to school. These people are having a terrible time. We should take them in, but we can't take 20 million people. I mean, that's absurd. How much of a duty of care do we have? And also the argument that, again, I think there's a difference when British forces have actually said, please help us as interpreters, working intricately with British forces, and in return for which we will guarantee your future safety. And Afghans signing up for an Afghan army, I'm still not convinced why we have a duty of care to those men, for instance?
Yeah, well, that's my point, that there are different roles that people, performed for us over many, many years. Some may have been on a couple of months contract and may have even been fired for not actually performing, and therefore they have a certificate that may have said they worked, but they didn't really do as much as others that really, really did put their lives on the line day in, day out for many, many years and have been stuck there. So I think we have to apply a sensible metric here to work out who actually was eligible. We clearly can't take everybody, but I fear that, well, I know that there are many who were the most deserving, who did the most for us, who were ejected for stupid administrative errors where a misspelt name on a spreadsheet meant that they were rejected when they turned up at Kabul airport. Those sort of things are really upsetting when you then hear that they were murdered in front of their families to send a message to anyone else who was seeking to try and get out of the country. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it is actually heartbreaking, especially some of these people actually being promised, we will get you out. What do you make of the law firms, two law firms who are Barings Law and Lee Day? I no doubt many others will come forward as well, who, bizarrely, they were able to know about this, even though taxpayers and MPs and many government ministers in this current government weren't able to know about this. Indeed, government ministers in the government that got the superinjunction under the Tories, that they have already got some 1,000 people to sort of sign up to a case where they're going to sue the British government over the fact their names were leaked in this big data breach. And we're looking at compensation, 50k, 150k, even more each. We're looking at possibly £1 billion. No doubt it could even go higher. When they've been brought to this country to live safely, now, even if their lives have been put at risk, they have now been rescued. They're living in on the cost of the British taxpayer already. It's the taxpayer who'll end up paying any compensation, ultimately, not the government, not the MoD. They haven't got any money that isn't ours. What do you think about people being allowed, after being brought here to safety, to sue for compensation from effectively the British people?
I would frame it slightly differently. That we've seen this before. Lee Day has got form in this space from the Iraq days. I wouldn't blame the Afghans themselves on the whole for this claim or this group claim being raised. We've seen it time and again that there are law firms that see an opportunity to exploit the system, which will make them a lot of money. And I've seen it where fairly ill-informed, let's say Iraqis or Afghans or others coming to this country will be told just to sign paperwork and they might get some money. Of course, they're going to say yes if they're told that that's a case they can win. I don't think we should be directing our ire at the Afghans themselves. I think we have to look at the law firms that are bringing this and understand what is their motivation, because I think I agree with you that if they're already here and there is no risk to them because they are safe and they don't have family members that are left behind, then it's quite hard to justify.
Yeah, and simply because of the simple fact that actually being able to live here and not live under the Taliban in Afghanistan, that is more than any compensation they could possibly have for any risk they had.
And every Afghan that I know that either I've helped or I'm aware were helped by my friends or colleagues, all they want to do is not be a burden and to contribute to society. They are integrated. They are delivering, really, high impact, roles and jobs, and want to just be a part of this society, and are so grateful to the UK government for getting them over here. So again, we have to be careful not to tar the entire population with the same brush when there are a few bad apples.
That is a very good point, isn't it? Because we know, look, there is a rate of criminality among Afghan people who have come to this country, which is off the scale compared to pretty much any other country in terms of their chances, their chances of being convicted of a crime. These are official statistics. This isn't people thinking it. This is a reality compared to other immigrants, but also compared to the British population at large. But often in that case, we are talking about people who've arrived here illegally, boat migrants. That's very, very different from people who've been brought in, who have served with British forces and often saved the lives of our British soldiers.
No, absolutely. I mean, the people that I served with have the highest levels of integrity and morals and community spirit, and they are disciplined and honourable people. Those that come across in boats will still be lumped into that Afghan group. Yeah. And if it says Afghans are committing crimes, it is, I'm pretty much say I can guarantee that it's none of the people that I would have served with. They are honourable people who want to just get on and make the most of the opportunity that the British government has given them. We should respect them for that. That
is very interesting. Thank you for that. Interesting to have that perspective. What do you make of the whole cover-up entirely? The fact that this was covered up for so long, and with a superinjunction, not even the Joint Intelligence Committee MPs who've been trusted with official secrets for many decades, not even being told about this, in spite of the fact that, you know, for a long time in the court conversations seen by, you know, witnessed by journalists who were not allowed to report on it from the Mail and the Times, that you know, we were looking at £7 billion of taxpayers' money being earmarked to pay for all of this, and there's been no public scrutiny. Taxpayers weren't informed, even MPs of the Defence Select Committee weren't informed. What do you make of that as someone who's served in the forces and will understand when there have to be secret operations and signing the Official Secrets Act, and obviously there are things that we can't know about, and often for many years, but do you think it was justified in this case?
Well, I think the scrutiny is coming now. You know, the fact that we're even talking about it, or every channel is talking about it and trying to hold people to account, I think that will come, and we have to be perhaps patient to once all the facts come out, because people are still only having probably a portion of the facts that are available, and they're being drip fed or coming to light every day. I think that needs to happen. I'm more focused on trying to hope or ensure that this doesn't happen again. Whatever process allowed this to happen that has ended up putting people at risk and costing taxpayers money that they shouldn't be liable for, that mustn't be able to happen again. And as long as the lessons are learned, and genuinely learned, not just identified, but properly learned, then we can make progress. If
only we could have faith in that. Colonel Alexander Cooper, OBE, former Joint Operational Commander with the British Armed Forces, 4 years serving in Afghanistan. Thank you. Great to hear your perspective on that. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, your face was a picture at the end of, you know, learning the lessons. Whenever I hear that phrase, I know they won't be learned. Your reaction to what he had to say?
I agree with everything that Ash said, but, you know, the Ministry of Defence never learns lessons. Yeah. It identifies them time after time after time. And I think the whole thing that's coming out of this is an arrogance in the Ministry of Defence that it thinks it can ride roughshod over the processes that we have in the constitutional processes that we have in this country, the constitutional oversights that we have in this country, and that they can make the rules up and none of them apply to them. Yeah. That's the big bit here. Yeah. The real fault in the MoD. It's not quite the ministers that are there. It's all the civil servants and senior officers that are enabling it as well.
My question mark over all of this is what else don't we know?
Yeah.
What other things? We know that governments cover things up all the time, and most of the time it's a back covering exercise. We know, I mean, we know that they knew very high up in the NHS and in the government for years that they were importing infected blood and continued to give it to haemophiliacs and newborn babies, and despite the fact they knew they were giving them HIV and hepatitis. And even once they knew and they stopped doing it, they didn't tell people who'd had it, even though these people could have actually had some treatments. You know, so if you're going to do that, right? If you're going to do that, if they knew about the post office scandal, they absolutely knew about it at the top level and did nothing about it. Every NHS crisis we've had, at some point they've known about it. We have this across the board. Grooming gangs. I mean, across the board, governments cover their backsides rather than tell us the truth. How do we ever stop that? Other than a new party comes in and then they expose the cover-ups of the last government, and then the next one. I mean, that's the only protection we've got.
Yeah, when John Healey turned around and said he didn't know of any other cover-ups that were going on,
no, superinjunctions. It was very specific.
Well, they're almost certainly...
He said, I haven't been read into them, if there are.
Exactly. And read into them means he hasn't been given...
There are 100% more superinjunctions right now, aren't there?
I know there are cover-ups in the Ministry of Defence, and I cannot talk about them.
Yeah. There we are then.